U.S. consumers are expecting a hit from President Donald Trump's latest round of tariffs on Chinese imports, set to be introduced tomorrow. The president told reporters yesterday before departing for a weekend stay at Camp David. Americans were largely spared from higher prices in his previous rounds of trade penalties. No longer. A currency trader watches monitors at the foreign exchange dealing room of the Kamala Bank headquarters in Seoul, South Korea. The 15% tariffs on 112 United States dollars (166 Australian dollars) billion in Chinese imports will apply to items ranging from smartwatches and TVs to shoes, diapers, sporting goods and meat and dairy products. For the first time since Mr. Trump launched his trade war, American households faced price increases. Many U.S. companies said they would be forced to pass on to customers the higher prices they had to pay on Chinese imports. Despite the looming pocketbook pain for Americans, Mr. Trump tried to frame the tariffs as putting the United States in an incredible negotiating position with Beijing. It's only going to get worse for China-related articles. For more than a year, the world's two largest economies have been locked in a high-stakes duel marked by Mr. Trump's escalating penalties on Chinese goods and Beijing's retaliatory tariffs. The two sides have held periodic talks that seem to have met little progress despite glimmers of potential breakthroughs. All the while, they have imposed tariffs on billions of each other's products in a rift over what analysts say is Beijing's predatory tactics in its strive to become the supreme high-tech superpower. We're going to win the fight, Mr. Trump asserted. A currency trader watches monitors at the foreign exchange dealing room of the Kamala Bank headquarters in Seoul, South Korea. President Donald Trump has ordered all U.S. companies with operations in China to begin looking for alternatives in response to retaliatory tariffs from Beijing. American consumers so far had been spared the worst of it. The Trump administration had left most everyday household items off its tariff list, valued at $250 billion United States dollars in Chinese products so far, and instead targeted industrial goods. Under the new tariff schedule, 69% of the consumer goods Americans buy from China were facing his import taxes, compared with 29% now. High tariffs also were set to kick in for another batch of Chinese products, $160 billion United States dollars worth, on December 15. By then, roughly 99% of made-in-China consumer goods imported to the United States will be taxed, according to calculations by Chad Bone of the Peterson Institute for International Economics. Overall, Mr. Trump's trade war will have raised the average tariff on Chinese imports from 3.1% in 2017, before the hostilities began, to 24.3%. The bottom line is that, for the first time, Trump's trade war is likely to directly raise prices for a lot of household budget items like clothing, shoes, toys, and consumer electronics, Mr. Bone wrote in a report. Mr. Trump famously declared that trade wars are easy to win. But for months, he falsely claimed that China itself paid the tariffs and that they left Americans unscathed. We cannot let China pursue these unfair and unreciprocal trading practices, Mr. Kudlow said. How U.S. consumers will be affected. In fact, U.S. importers pay the tariffs. They must make a high-risk decision, absorb the higher costs themselves and accept lower profits, or pass on their higher costs to the customers and risk losing business. This has become an ever more difficult decision. After years of ultra-low inflation, consumers have grown more resistant to price hikes, especially when they can easily compare prices online for household products and choose the lowest price options. For that reason, many retailers may choose not to impose the cost of the higher tariffs on their customers. The higher costs U.S. importers faced could be offset somewhat by the declining value of China's currency, which has the effect of making China's products somewhat less expensive in the United States. Still, the prices of certain goods will cost Americans more. Mr. Trump tacitly acknowledged this a few weeks ago by announcing a delay in his higher tariffs on $160 billion in imports until December 15 to keep him from squeezing holiday shoppers. Even before the December tariffs, though, 52% of shoes and 87% of textiles and clothing imported from China were to be hit by Trump's tariffs, according to Peterson Spoon. Mr. Trump today said in a series of tweets that he will respond in hours to an announcement Friday, local time, that China was retaliating to U.S. tariffs with a slate of its own protective measures. At the hidden toll of China tariffs, and not even counting the increase, from 10% to 15%, that Mr. Trump announced for his new tariffs a week ago, J.P. Morgan had estimated that his import taxes would cost the average household roughly $1,000 1,484 Australian dollars a year. The story that holiday goods were given a reprieve is fake news, said Stephen Lamar of the American Apparel and Footwear Association. Overall, the 15% September and December tariffs will force Americans to pay an extra $4 billion a year for shoes and boots, according to a footwear trade group. Retailers, engaged for a battle for survival with Amazon and other e-commerce rivals, braced for the worst. Meanwhile, the U.S. economy itself looks increasingly fragile. Growth is slowing as the global economy weakens. And Mr. Trump's mercurial approach to trade policy, imposing, delaying, reimposing import taxes via tweet, makes it nearly impossible for companies to decide on supplies, factory sites and new markets. So they delay investments, further straining the economy. Copyright 9 Digital Pty Limited 2019. Let's block ads. Why?